Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Preds Power Hour here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Also here, over there in Nashville, Tennessee, on the Forecheck zone, Bryan Bastin. Bryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right, considering that the Preds only lost by a touchdown tonight. Still doing okay.
Speaking of losing by a touchdown, a fan of a team who loses by a lot of touchdowns every fall Saturday, Jeff Middleton of Flames Nation and everywhere else. Jeff, good evening, sir. How are you? That was great. That was such an easy top. Thank you, Bryan, for that.
That was wow. That was random, and I don't appreciate that, but it's okay. We move forward. I'm good, Chase. It's good to be back. It's good to have another week with you guys.
Oh man, so we in the group chat, there's been a lot of hype about this particular episode.
Oh yeah,
and folks are mad. Bryan is mad.
No, I'm not. I'm not mad.
Jeff is mad.
I'm not that mad. I mean, I'm a little frustrated, but I'm not as mad as I was at one point in my fandom as a Pred.
Okay. Well,
it's
Bryan,
been worse.
lay it out here to get this thing started. How should we approach this discourse? I feel like I'm starting off first take, and we've got Chris Russo and Stephen A. Smith here, and I'm just going to be moderating.
This is blasphemous.
Crab rangoons, things of that nature. Yeah. So, okay, let's start out with this. It's never good, no matter what state your team is in, to lose a game 9-2. It is not good to have a player that you're paying $4 to $5 million a year to score against you twice. It's heartbreaking to see a personal favorite in Craig Smith score, and it's just not good. You can't spin a 9-2 loss anyway to make it seem like a positive thing. And I completely understand the frustration from Predators fans. Nobody likes to see their team lose, especially not in that fashion, and nobody likes to see them getting embarrassed at home, which has unfortunately been a little bit of a tradition this season. However, people are acting like the sky is falling. And this reminds me of maybe one of my very, very favorite tweets out there that says, me sowing, hell yeah, this rules. And then me reaping, what the hell, this sucks. And that's kind of what we're experiencing. People have been saying for 2, 3, 4 years now that this team avoiding the rebuild, avoiding, not necessarily a tank, but being bad in order for the future to be good, has been awful. And I would say I agree with that sentiment. Yes, I think Nashville's in the position they are. They could have been in this position maybe 3 years ago and had, gotten results a little bit faster. But everybody wanted to rebuild. Everybody wanted, many people said, jettison the entire team and rebuild from scratch. And what this team has done this season, Chase, I always admire the fact that you do still believe that this is a playoff team, and they very well could be. This is not a good hockey team. And, again, we talked about this last week. This team has about, I'd say, little under half of the players on the active NHL roster who are pending free agents. And only 3 or 4 players are guys that were brought in by Barry Trotz, Andrew Burnett, that team. And I would say they're about 50-50 on their acquisitions. For every Luke Shen that you get, you have a Gustav Nyquist who has outperformed pretty much literally everybody's expectations. But, again, I don't worry about things like, let's say, for example, and a guy that I like a ton, and I know that Jeff will make is one of the cornerstones of his argument, Philip Tomasino.
Mm-hmm.
He has potential. He is a very good player. Very likely he's a little bit too good for the AHL, like he showed, 2 years ago. But I don't think it's a bad thing that he went down there, because how much more is a Phil Tomasino going to take from a game like he saw tonight as opposed to what he's seen in Milwaukee? We've seen guys like Mark Jankowski, who played for the Preds quite a few games last season and did fairly well, but I think his game has gotten much better in the AHL this season, and that's what kind of earned him this call-up. Same with Igor Afanasyev. Those are 2 guys who are top 10 in the AHL in scoring. Nobody's got more shorthanded goals than Igor Afanasyev in the AHL, and that team is on a 15-game winning streak. They went from being, I think, something like 12 games back of Hershey for first place in the league, and I think they're a game and a half now. Yaroslav Askarov, I believe he's won 10 straight starts now for the Admirals, or 11 actually, which would be a franchise record. But unfortunately, his teammate, Troy Grosnick, has broke that record earlier this season and sits with 13 straight. It's, there's a lot of electrifying players and it's really great. And I think that time in Milwaukee, especially since Tomasino is waiver exempt, which meant there was no danger, no risk to sending him down. I don't think it's the thing. How much, would tonight have been a better experience for Phil Tomasino than it would be with him being with the Admirals, even if they weren't in the midst of this winning streak? I think it's going to be a good thing for him. And we've seen guys in the past get sent down to Miami who just kind of needed that spark. I mean, we can talk about guys like, again, I like Tomasino a lot. I think he's a team that a person that you center part of this team around for the future. But he accounts for about 4.5% of all of Nashville's points this season, little under 4.5 for all their goals. I mean, it's not missing a ton. There is potential. I made that argument with Eli Tolvanen. He wasn't scoring goals, but he was doing everything else right. Tomasino struggled a little bit. I mean, the top 5 forwards on this team, looking at something like goals above replacement, number 5 is Mike McCarron. And I will say, kudos to Mike McCarron, because he's playing a very kind of important role, and I think he's been pretty good. I mean, obviously, you adjust your expectations for a guy that was originally drafted, 5th overall by Montreal when he got drafted. Now he's just now hitting 200 career NHL games. But I think the role that he's playing, I think he's been good. Same with a guy like Jeremy Lazan. Now, of course, we have our Luke Shens. We have those types of guys who just, there's no amount of optimism in the world that's going to spin them as good players. But I asked this question to people on Twitter tonight. You could put your ideal lineup on the ice tonight, or maybe the rest of the season. How many more wins is this team going to get? How much is playing a guy like Tomasino on this team right now? Is that going to make him that much better in the future? And I don't know. It very well could, but the first line is producing everything. Like this first line, first line and Roman Josi account for over 28% of all the points scored by Nashville. I mean, it's not like Tomasino was being a just generating a ton of points or playing really, really good defense and just was getting ignored. I think it's kind of a little bit separate issue. He's struggling a little bit because he's a young player, and that happens. Is it time to give up on him? Absolutely not. But is it a bad thing that he's a Milwaukee Admiral right now? I don't think so either. I think that this team is overachieving, if nothing else. But this team is what they are. They are a rebuilding team. And the thing that encourages me is, and the difference you see between a John Hines or Peter Laviolette team is there's a skill gap, but they're doing the things that when they're better is going to make them more successful. They're not winning these games just because they got really hot shooting and Juuse Saros stood on his head every single game and won them some games they definitely didn't deserve. The Predators and Predators fans are learning what it means to not have, a brick wall and goaltending every single game. And that's fine, and, half this team is auditioning for whether or not they want to stay in Nashville because, again, largely Brunette and Trotz are playing with David Poile players. And, we saw some of them get jettisoned this offseason, which is fine. But, a lot of these guys aren't going to be back. And a lot of these guys need to be shopped around and need to play games. There's no reason, in an ideal situation that Tyson Barrie is back in the lineup this much, but he rode the bench for so long. No one's going to trade for a guy who's been sitting on the bench for 30 games. You showcase these guys. You see what you have. You put a bunch of different combinations on the ice because you want to see what chemistry these guys could do, because this is, if you're Brunette, this is your first, real look at these players and what they have to offer. And they're evaluating whether or not, how much more of this roster they have to turn over, how much longer will the rebuild be. And the fact that these guys are still getting ice time, even though it's not every single game, kind of shows me that it's like they've got a chance. And players who are jumping out and doing good things. Cole Smith hasn't missed a game this season, I don't believe. But I don't think many people could argue that Cole Smith doesn't deserve that chance. Cole Smith has been very good. I mean, not stellar and not a guy that you want, on a contending team like that, but he's been solid, hasn't been making a ton of mistakes. Guys like Cody Glass, really struggling. Juuse Saros, really struggling. Colton Sissons, struggling. And these are all guys that are sitting at the very bottom of, looking at analytics, goal totals, point totals, whatever. They're just not doing a great job. And so it's hard when you look at a guy like, Michael McCarron being like, why is he in the lineup? Because he's performing better than his teammates, and that's just plain and simple what it is. And yes, I will never say that you shouldn't be upset with this team. You shouldn't be mad. You shouldn't be embarrassed to watch a game like that we just saw. But I also want to say is it's not easy. It's not easy to rebuild. You can't turn, it doesn't turn around that quickly. And also you can't rely on Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly to score 2 or 3 goals a game just to keep you afloat, because the rest of the team just isn't interested in providing goal support. So I think we're getting what we all asked for, and it's ugly and it sucks, but they're pulling the Band-Aid off quick. Poyle did the whole slow peel for 3 years and it's hurt worse. So you just peel it off. You see what these guys get. And if you have to have a bad year, you have a bad year. But, let's get a draft pick that's not in the mid-20s this time. Let's get a top 15. Let's get a top 10. Why not? Because you're going to get this team into the first round of play. Yeah. And this team makes into the first round of playoffs. Cool. What happens after that? Can you tell me that this team, even at its best, with the most ideal lineup you can think of, is this team beating literally anybody else in the Western Conference in a playoff series? I don't think so. And that's okay. It is okay to be a little bit bad, to be mediocre. It's fine. This year it is, I think.
Jeff, your response.
Well, I can at least agree with it's frustrating to watch a 9-2 loss. I think the problem is not that they're losing games. First of all, it's how they're losing the games. Because frankly, even in a rebuild, the goal is for not to be embarrassing every night. And frankly, over the last probably couple of weeks, there have been more nights than not where it has been pretty embarrassing to watch this team. And it's been hard to watch this team. There's a difference. I mean, when I think about rebuilding teams that are fun, I think about the Ottawa Senators, who are still kind of in that phase. But a couple years ago, they lost a lot of games, but they lost games in fashions where it was not. It wasn't hard to watch. It was guys, skilled players who were young, had top 6 to 9 minutes, were given consistent quality chances in the lineup by their head coach, who I think a lot of Senators fans even had qualms with, but he gave them chances, and they were able to they played a system that wasn't like it was kind of just run and gun, and it was a lot of what could be this Andrew Brunette system, to be honest, because of this high school guys. They were just able to make those plays, and yeah, it was frustrating to watch them lose, I think, for Sens fans, considering nobody wants their team to lose, but they knew where they were and they knew what the team was supposed to be. And I don't think the problem is that Preds fans, I think for the most part, Preds fans understand that this is where the team is, that they're going to lose games. But the problem comes when you have guys like Luke Evangelista, who is, by all accounts, pretty much been good this year. He's been the only young player that I think has been given a solid chance to play in the lineup and has done well with it. And I think sitting him for Denis Gurianov blows my mind, because I understand that as a coach, I think this is where a lot of the people's issues lie. It's where my issues lie. And I think it's with the coaching decisions, first of all. But I think it's the fact that for some reason, this coaching staff seems, I don't want to say unaware, but like it feels like that they're not considering the fact that this team is not good. Like they're not going to consider it that
like we do. But it just feels like the goal is always to make the playoffs, but Andrew Burnett's decisions are like, if you're focusing on it from that point of view, I don't understand how the decisions you're making help you to that goal. And I don't understand how the decisions you're making, if you don't think the playoffs are a viable option, are good for a rebuild. Because one, you're taking out players who can really help you. Now, Juuse Saros, I would say, is probably the player who most struggled, who wasn't actually helping the lineup to score. I would say that the decision to send him down was pretty universally welcomed, just because he wasn't himself, and we know what he can do when he is himself, and that's helped this team win games. But you're taking out Phil Tomasino, who, yes, struggled early, but in the last 20 games before he was sent down, he had 11 points. Like, he was scoring. He was playing well. And then you take him out of the lineup because he made a bad pass or made a play that you don't want to happen. And by doing so, you add in a guy who can't score. Like, you're taking out a guy who also, not only, I mean, the amount of times I've seen Philip Tomasino back check and make an impact is this year, especially in this recent stretch where he was like really, really performing as well as I think any of us would like him to be performing. It's I can't even count it. And there's clips on Twitter that I've seen where he'll come back, he'll make a mistake, or he'll make a pass, and the guy will turn the puck over, and he's the first man back. And you're telling me because he makes a bad pass, he's not going to help this lineup to win? You just lost 9-2. Like, what is the possible reason other than help his confidence out a little bit?
Yeah, it might have been an 8-3 game with him.
But that doesn't. I don't think that the point is that the rebuild is it's happening. It's here. It's what's going on. And Andrew Brunette, no matter how much he wants to make the playoffs, this team is not good enough. And that's just how it is. Their defense is terrible. They can't, like, their structure is terrible. I shouldn't say their defense as a whole is terrible. Their structure is not good.
No, it is as a whole pretty terrible.
I mean, yeah, but the structure is really the problem here. But
So when you say the structure is terrible, what do you mean by that?
There's a lot of running around in the defensive zone, I would say, from what I've seen. And I
add something to that too? And I think
Sure.
this is something people don't consider enough. The defense is bad. I would say that it's not too much worse than what we've seen in previous years. I think that people are hesitant to put a lot of the blame, and I wouldn't even say the blame, but hesitant to admit one thing. Juuse Saros ain't himself. And that's fine. He's earned it. He's absolutely earned the fact to not be that great this year. And that's okay, because it also gives this team a wake-up call to say, hey, you cannot rely on Juuse Saros like you did with Pekka Rinne to steal you 30 games a season in games that you definitely shouldn't have won. And that's what they're doing, and it's fine. It's fine that, again, if anybody has earned the right to have a mediocre season, it's Juuse freaking Saros.
So what's making it mediocre, and what's different about him this year than the last couple of years?
I would say one of the biggest things I've noticed was he made a lot of good strides in the last 2 seasons with his rebound control. And this season, everything's bouncing out of his hand. I think his lateral movement's been a little bit off, and I'm not sure. I have a theory, and please do not quote me on this or say anything, but I just have a theory. I think he's dealing with some type of an injury that's not too bad. Because something's not right. I don't know what it is, but also the rebound control. And that was one of the things, that he turned around a lot. Pekka was always incredible with his rebound control, and Saros wasn't that great. And then as Saros got more games around, he went from being, I think, bottom 5 in the NHL as far as like allowing rebounds off shots to top 5. And then I imagine he's probably back towards the bottom 5 this season. Yeah, and yes, it doesn't help that the defense in front of him is Swiss cheese, but it's not a, I think it's a mixed blessing. You obviously don't want to see it. And also, you know what? Let him be mediocre so people stop asking about trading for him. Because I don't want to see him go. But I mean, you make a solid point. Yes. Philip Tomasino, 41 games. So he's missed about a quarter of all the team's games. 7 goals, 13 assists. Not bad. But again, I just don't see the harm in putting him, when you can do it for free, putting him in Milwaukee and letting him get his confidence back up. Because yes, he's doing good things, but it's not consistent. And you know what? I can say the same thing about, a guy like Phil Forsberg, who kind of has these off and on streaks. Now, obviously, it's a very different conversation when you talk about a guy named Phil Forsberg, but, Luke Evangelista, they've played 54 games. He's played in 52 of them. I'm not super worried about him sitting tonight. I'm not, I'm a little bit more worried. I think a player I would be on, agree with you on, Jeff, and feel the same way you feel about Tomasino is Dante Fabro.
Yes. I forgot they healthy scratched him tonight.
However, again, you can't shop around a guy like Tyson Barrie if he's riding the pine. For whatever reason, GMs in the NHL think he's fantastic. Same with Luke Shen. So you just got to play him. I bet you if they could send Fabro down, they would. They can't, and that's fine. But he's also not have a great year. Cody Glass really struggled. Ryan McDonough, not a great year. So
does this worry y'all about Burnett is like handling lines and handling who to play?
Nope.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Y'all differ. Okay, Jeff, why does it worry you?
This is the crux of the argument is the lineup decisions being made. Is I cannot. If you're making this is my point is if you're aiming for the playoffs and you're taking out 2 guys at any point who help this team win. If they lose, this is where everybody was at a year ago or 2 years ago. If they lose and every young player was in the lineup, don't care. Literally could not care less, because that's how a rebuild works. That's how a retool works. You play your guys in the top of the lineup who are young and inexperienced. And if you're trying to win games and the only offense outside of your first line is coming from those young and inexperienced players, play them. Like, yes, Philip Tomasino has been inconsistent at times, but this last stretch of 20 games, he's been pretty solid. And in games where he's been solid, Andrew Brunette has benched him. The Ottawa game, he was phenomenal. He's really good. And then he didn't play. He played like one shift. It blows my mind. I cannot understand why if you want to make the playoffs and you take your best offensive players out for Denis Gurianov or whoever, that doesn't make any sense, because you're actively hurting your chances to win. And then if you're in a rebuild, why wouldn't you keep your young players in the sure, confidence, whatever, but if you move guys out at the deadline, like, I don't know why. First of all, I have a problem with the fact that Philip Tomasino hasn't played anywhere near Tommy Novak this entire season. And when he has played with Tommy Novak, he's been really good and he's scored goals. So that's a problem that I have in and of itself. But the fact that you're aiming to win and then you take out the best players that you have that give you a chance to win because they make simple mistakes when you're playing guys every night like Michael McCarron, who has overall been good this season, but makes stupid mistakes. Like, and you're like, okay with it. There's no repercussions for that. And like, it's honestly, it makes me as frustrated as Lindy Ruff benching Alexander Holtz. Like, Alexander Holtz, for what he is, he's an inexperienced young player who does make mistakes. No one can argue that. The pass that Lindy Ruff was referencing after Alex Holtz got benched and he was asked about it at the end of the game, and he told Ryan Novozinski, who's a great reporter, he told Ryan Novozinski that he doesn't watch the games well because he pointed out that he didn't understand why Holtz was benched after he was a strong offensive catalyst for the first 2 periods of the game. Like, one bad pass benches him for the rest of the period and he doesn't play the rest of the game. That's frustrating. And that's really annoying because that Alex Holtz, with who he's playing with, he's been better than Philip Tomasino has been, and he's still getting benched, and that's really frustrating. But that's like my point is like you have one mistake making an entire problem of Philip Tomasino's game, or a mistake in the third period that leads to a turnover. Okay, that's a bad thing. And Philip Tomasino, I don't think anybody would disagree that Philip Tomasino needs to work on things. I think that there's film that you watch where Philip Tomasino has not been good. But it's like the good stuff is being weighed less for whatever reason than the bad stuff. And the bad stuff is making the decisions instead of an aggregate. If the Predators were losing 8-3 with every young player in the lineup, I'll say it again, no one would care, because that's where this franchise is. I don't think people would care if they lost 8-3. I mean, they'd care, but not in the way that, oh, you're benching Luke Evangelista, you've sent down Philip Tomasino, you've sent down Juuse Parssinen for Michael McCarron's still playing. Denis Gurianov needs ice time, apparently. You'll sub in Kiefer Sherwood occasionally. Like, people want to see these young guys get opportunities, and they're not, other than Luke Evangelista. And for some reason, Luke Evangelista is sitting for Denis Gurianov, which,
he sat for 2 games out of 54. Two games out of 54. I don't think we're at the stage to sound the alarm for Luke Evangelista.
But the problem comes with that being, I agree, 2 games is not that
I think your
many.
bigger issue doesn't seem like it's not about the actual stat. It's about the rhyme or reason that I think bothers Jeff.
Oh, you want to come at me and saying it's not about stats, it's about reason? Come on, do you not know?
No, not
brand,
reason.
guys?
I'm saying it's less about that to Jeff. I think Jeff wants to understand the rationale. Like, explain this to me and your game to game decision.
I haven't heard a good explanation from Andrew Brunette as to why these guys are I think for Tomasino more than either of them. And I don't think that no argument. I think Andrew Brunette, I will say this before anything else. I think Andrew Brunette is a fantastic hockey coach. I think right now, the system that he coaches is really good. And I love watching the Predators play it on a good night. But I think the lineup that he has right now is constructed in a certain way where the young players should be getting opportunities that they are currently not. And that is frustrating. Denis Gurianov was playing with Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg tonight. We have not seen any young player outside of maybe Evangelista once play with those guys. It has always been O'Reilly, Forsberg, and Nyquist, which that's fine. That line has been really good. You said it, Brian. I mean, they've accounted for a bunch of the points.
Yeah, I was wrong. They're accounted for 46% of all the points.
Yeah, that's a.
Have they really? Just from those 3?
Those 3 plus Yossi, yeah.
I'll say that's insane. But that's what is stopping Andrew Brunette from moving Philip Tomasino up to that line. What could possibly go wrong with that? Like, to the point where he's been barred from playing even a minute with talented players. I said it literally 2 minutes ago. We have seen him play with Tommy Novak probably 3 or 4 times this season, and all of those times he has been fantastic. And then he gets relegated back to the 4th line with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith. And people want to wonder why Philip Tomasino, 22-year-old Philip Tomasino, an offensively inclined but strong two-way player most of the time, is not playing well, is not performing to the level that we want him to be in the offensive zone. Like, really? Like, I don't know why this has been such a shock. Like, it's really, I will never accept this. Denis Gurianov needs ice time, so we have to sit one of the young guys. I can't. Even if it's Luke Evangelista.
I even if it's, I've had a lot of time to simmer on this, but
You
like,
have.
even if it's Luke Evangelista, who, you're right, has not missed a lot of games, but like, just the idea that needs to happen, and we need to sit Evangelista. We need him. He needs to sit out, not Trennan, not Jankowski, who you're probably not going to sit anyway, but that's just a name. Like, Luke Evangelista, the young guy, the inexperienced young guy, needs to sit out, who has helped this team win games. It just boggles my mind. I just the lineup decisions are.
Let's do a quick exercise, though. I'm going to name guys off who have played more games than Philip Tomasino, and you tell me if any of these players deserve to, or Tomasino deserves a spot over them. So we can start with Forsberg, Yossi, Nyquist, O'Reilly. You're not going to say yes on those. Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon come up next. These are all 54 game players. You can make an argument maybe for Lauzon, or if you really want to poke the hornet's nest, sometimes Sissons. But Sissons is also your third leading goal scorer.
I was gonna say, I respect Colton Sissons' game enough to know that they're not going to do, one, they're not going to do that, and two, they shouldn't do that. So
okay, so then the guys with 52 games: Luke Evangelista, Cole Smith, Yakov, Trennan. Still, I would say that they've outperformed. After that, Carrier, McDonough.
I don't think Yakov Trennan is really that necessary for this lineup. I'm gonna say it right now. I think that they should move on from him. I think that Philip Tomasino should play over him.
Okay, Carrier, McDonough, Parsonen, Novak, Fabro. Those are all the guys who have played as many or more games than Philip Tomasino. And again, I would be with you on this conversation if Tomasino was sitting at anywhere between 25 to 30 games played. I would totally be with you. But let's be honest, this guy, you've got guys like Philip Tomasino, Luke Evangelista. These guys are both high draft picks. These are guys who were drafted to be a cornerstone of this team. And I think that the difference has been pretty obvious. I love Luke Evangelista is progressing in a way that you would expect a player of his caliber. This is a guy that scored, over 100 points in the OHL in his last season. And like the last guy to do that, from a Preds perspective was freaking Ryan Ellis, who had something insane like 121 year. Philip Tomasino, it's one of those, I think if he had been given up on, it'd be a lot different. I don't think he's been given up on. But, some guys are just, again, too, like some of these guys had to play under John Hines. Some of these guys played under Laviolette. And sometimes you have to give them time to get that stink off them. It's like getting sprayed by a skunk. It's going to take a long time to get that stink off you.
Is a lot of this just solved after this offseason where so many of these guys are gone and then you can go full out with the youth movement here?
Some of it, I think, but I think this season, again, it's an audition. It is a let's see what combos work. Oh, and by the way, Jeff, you were wondering, there are 20 games and about 70 minutes of Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Parsonen. So there has been another combination.
Okay.
But, that's spread out, and I don't know if I would fully count
Jeff's
that.
not a combo guy. Jeff's not a combo. He's an individual kind of guy.
I think it's important.
I also think it's one of those arguments, and this is not one that Jeff's making, but like one of my biggest pet peeves is when people get so mad about the order of the lines when they announce it before a game. What do you mean he's a fourth liner? Like, no. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's how they're played. It's situational playing. It's who you're with and how they're being used. It's whatever.
I was gonna say, I'd focus more on the time on ice than anything. I'd focus more on the post game sheet than I would the pregame lineup.
Right, exactly. I mean, but it's one of those things. And it's like, if this was a team that should be contending, if this is a brunette team in its third year and this is happening, it's one thing. But I think that the expectation, like the fact that they succeeded early in the season and looked surprisingly good. One, it's all because of, when four players on your team make up nearly half of all the scoring for you, like, I'm trying to come up with an expression for it, but it's like, honestly, like when you look at the rest of the team, we're kind of just being like, well, which of these turds is the least amount of turd? Like, they haven't been good. You can't rely on four guys to carry your entire team. You need depth scoring, and there is none. Again, Colton Sissons is the third highest goal scorer on this team. And no disrespect to Colton Sissons, but I think that says a lot about the rest of the team more so than it does about him. And, Nashville's lucky to have Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi finally bouncing back into Roman Josi form. But, it's also got to be super frustrating to them when you get these different lineups and it's just not working. It's not working. It's not working. Try another lineup. It's not working. Like, they can't do everything. Phil Forsberg, bless his heart, tries no matter what. There are points in the game where you see him being like, screw these guys. I'm going to try to do it myself. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, you've got to try out what you have. These are players that Nashville has the rights to right now. So they're getting a better evaluation time than the other teams who are maybe coming after him. And they've got to see what they've got, not just for a sense of, can this guy fit into our roster for the future, but which one of these guys is going to get us something that can accommodate that plan that we have in the future. Philip Tomasino missing 13 games out of this season so far. I'm not worried. Yes, are there guys that should be getting less ice time or guys that should not be getting ice time over Phil Tomasino? Sure. But Denis Gurianov, he's played 13 games. We don't know. I mean, that's as many games as Liam Foudy played. You don't know what you have yet. And you've got to try it sometimes. You've got to see what a Kiefer Sherwood can do. You've got to see what a Mark Jankowski can do. Although I'm pretty sure I think we know what Mark Jankowski can do, and I think he does deserve to be in the NHL roster right now. You've got to see that.
I want to.
I
agree, but my problem is that they're not they're not seeing what they have with other line combinations for Phil Tomasino or I don't understand. Sure, you want to get I don't think Kiefer Sherwood's bad enough to sit him the whole year, so you want to get him in sometimes. But I think you want to see what you have, but you're not seeing what you have with with their younger guy. You're not seeing. I think most of this is surrounding Philip Tomasino, but if you're if you play him with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith the entire year, yeah, he can play on the fourth line, but that's not what he's here for. That's not the minutes you want him to get. And frankly, his entire career, he hasn't gotten those minutes because the coaches that he played under, John Hines and now Andrew Brunette, have not given him the chance to see what he's got. And frankly, Andrew Brunette this year has not expressed a lot of confidence in Philip Tomasino. And I think that is probably, at least I would be frustrated with it, but I would assume it's a little frustrating when your coach goes to the media and starts, publicly bashing you for these little mistakes that you're making. And, it's one thing to be like, well, we'd like Philip Tomasino to be a little bit more consistent with whatever. That's different, but it's felt kind of constant this year. And it doesn't feel like there's ever been a time when Brunette has come out and just been straight up Tomer had a good game tonight or something. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope to be wrong. In this, I mean, I don't want to hear that a coach has been coming out and doing that consistently, but from what I've seen, it doesn't feel like you really are seeing what you've got because you're keeping this kid down on the fourth line with two guys that can't score. I don't know. The fact that you played Denis Gurianov for 13 games and, in the 14th game or the 13th game, he comes in and just gets a spot on the first line. He's 26 years old or whatever. And he doesn't score. He just jumps up.
But in this lineup, who does score?
Well, that's my point though, is but Denis Gurianov is not going to be the solution.
Yeah, but we said the same thing about Gustav Nyquist. We sat here, the both of us, saying that same thing.
Gustav Nyquist has a history. He can score. Denis Gurianov has one season of 20 goals at 24 years old, and that's it. Gustav Nyquist, for the couple years where he wasn't scoring a lot, has a history of being able to score when he's played with good players.
But you know what? We'll talk about history. Philip Tomasino has one season with more than 30 points. His career high in goals is 11. We can talk history and say the guy doesn't score. Huge Tomasino fan. Huge Tomasino fan.
Well, that's my question though. Is why?
Who does Colton Sissons play with?
But Colton Sissons is not the same as Philip Tomasino.
That's right. Because
You
Colton
know
Sissons
that.
is a role player, but the problem is that
Tomasino's
Tomasino
not
is not
supposed to be.
performing. He's not supposed to be, but he's a first-round pick. This is the last year of his rookie deal. You have to know what you're going to get because you have two options at the end of this year. Do you let this guy go who was a first-round pick, 24th overall, who was supposed to be a foundation of the new team going forward? You have to find out in these games, can he handle the pressure? Can he handle criticism? Can he handle being sent down? Or is that going to be something where he says, I needed to be better. This was a good chance for me to do that. That was a really good story. And I cannot remember who the player was. I think it was in The Athletic yesterday about or someone going down and spend like 22 games in the AHL when people really didn't think he should. And he was like, no, I absolutely should have. It's time for Philip Tomasino. Like the only way that we can settle this debate clearly is that Philip Tomasino comes in and plays like a first round draft pick. Luke Evangelista is doing that.
Okay. I agree, but this is the same stuff that made me frustrated with Matt Duchene in those first 2 years, because Matt Duchene could not score for the life of him. And the moment that he starts, his analytics were good, he was playing well, and you brought up Philip Tomasino's history. When his first season, he was told by John Hines that he needs to straighten out his two-way game. His second season, despite his first year, him being probably the best defensive player that the Predators iced that year. At least top 5. His numbers were fantastic. Then the second year, he's sent down. He works hard on defense and he gets his confidence up. He scores in the AHL. He does everything he's asked to do. And then when he's back up, he doesn't play in the top 6. Like he doesn't get power play time. He doesn't get the opportunity to really show what he's got. And then this year, it's the same crap. He's been stuck on the 4th line. Matt Duchene in his first and second years with the Predators couldn't score. But the problem was because he was playing with Brad Richardson and Eric Howla. Like, sure, the history is not there. But when you play with guys that also can't score, then I don't know what you expect. Like, I don't expect Philip Tomasino at 22 years old to be able to drive a line with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith on it. That's not
But again, I would argue, and this is odd for me to do this a year out, but who's the underperforming player on that lineup, those 3 players? Unfortunately, it's Phil Tomasino. He started out fantastic. His numbers, his analytics, plus 10 in goals above replacement. He has gone down. He went down to 3 last season, and he's sitting about 1.2. He's playing as a replacement level player. And what's the judge of where replacement level is? It's your 13th forward or your 7th defenseman. It's usually a guy who's in the AHL. And that's just been the way it is. And again, there's 2 things. Yes, give him chances. Maybe give him more time with those top lines. Good, sure, fine. But,
I'm gonna note that Philip Tomasino is 8th in expected goals above replacement.
Expected, yes.
Yeah. So he's 8th on the team, and you're.
Yes, because this is a replacement level team. That's what this is.
But my point is that's not. One, I would argue that number could absolutely be influenced by who he's playing with, because he's not.
By its, like, and we're going to get way deep into the nerd stuff, but by the way the metric works, it's specifically to isolate them from the players that they're playing with.
Yeah, but it's not perfect though. You watch him and he's clearly not like, I can't believe a nerd am doing this, but like you watch, if you watch the games.
How dare you? How dare you assume I would ever do something like that?
Test. Do it, Jeff.
I watch these games, right? And I try to watch as many as possible. And I don't. Every time I watch Philip Tomasino play with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith, Michael McCarron more than or Cole Smith more than either. I mean, I don't think Cole Smith he's not a world. At least Michael McCarron's been scoring this year, and I believe the expected goals. I don't know, the expected goals above replacement number for him is actually pretty low, but it reminds me. It reminds me of that. No, it reminds me of that clip of Matt Duchene giving a perfect pass to Eric Goodbranson, and Goodbranson completely whiffing and going through his legs. Like, that's just what I imagine. There have been so many times this year where I have watched Philip Tomasino attempt to create offense, and there has just been no help from the other guys. And that's like, you don't even have to stick him on the first line. Stick him with Tommy Novak, man. He's been really good with Tommy Novak. Like, I don't know. It's the same stuff as the Matt Duchene for me. Like, obviously they're different in terms of Matt Duchene was older and he had proved himself. He had been, 70-point scorer or whatever. But, Matt Duchene wasn't getting 70 points playing with fourth liners. He was up on every team's top line or their second line. He was playing with Mike Hoffman and Mark Stone. Like, or Ryan Dzingel actually. But like, as much as Philip Tomasino's history is not great, I would argue that his history has kind of been indicative of where he's been stuck in the lineup. And the same went for Eeli Tolvanen. Eeli Tolvanen, in the year that he was getting first power play minutes and playing with top guys like Philip Forsberg, he was in the Calder conversation for a while before he got hurt. And then after he got hurt, he didn't see the ice with any of those guys. And then everybody was like, why isn't he scoring anymore? Why? And he was like taken off the first power play unit. And everybody, like, it was like, John Hines was like, oh, he's not scoring. Like, their decision was like, he's not scoring anymore. He needs to go work on his defensive game and his physicality. And he did that. And then he didn't get a lineup promotion. He didn't end up playing with those guys again. Like, it doesn't. If Philip Tomasino, I'll say this just because I'm rambling. If Andrew Brunette came out, brought Tomasino back up, they brought him up, and we're like, you know what? We like what you've done in the AHL. We're going to stick you with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly for, I don't know, the rest of the season or half of the rest of the season, 15 games or whatever. And if you don't perform like we need you to, then you're going back on the fourth line or you're going back to work down low against these lesser matchups. And he doesn't perform as he should, even though 15 games is still a relatively small sample size. If he doesn't perform like he should, I'm more than happy to stick him on the fourth line, stick him on the third line, whatever.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. You're making decisions. You get to decide the rest of this season, but like based on what we've seen so far, right now, the projection for Tomasino in free agency looks to be around $1.85 million for about 2 to 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Do you sign Philip Tomasino to that contract right now?
I mean, what do they have to lose? Like,
well, I mean, a lot, but
for 3 years where they are, I don't know.
They're going to be losing like $10 million in cap space for the next 2 seasons for players that are not playing for them anymore. I mean,
well,
money, you're also, if they keep Saros,
a decision I was against, but
Saros is going to be going to cost a lot more than $5 million here very soon. They should trade. I don't like your attitude tonight, Jeff.
I know, I'm snarky.
How dare you invoke Tolvanen right now on this? But no, but I mean, I see what you're getting at. But here's
like, this brings me to $5 million off the books, like right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not gonna. We've had this conversation. I will say this: that the fact that this has been an argument and this has been a point of contention, it's a good thing, because you know what? Like, if that's what we're arguing about in this season and the way things are going, I mean, I'll take it. Yeah. This has not been a team I'm gonna knock on wood, this has not been a team that has dealt with a massive amount of injury problems. We have not seen any controversy. None of their former CHL players are currently getting ready to go to trial.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dante Fabro for being a decent human being. I mean, I think that, all things considered, this team is pretty much exactly what I thought they would be and probably what they should be. And that's fine. And yes, it sucks to not fill Bridgestone. Bridgestone has been getting pretty empty these days.
Yeah.
But it happens. And that's fine. But you just have to have this, we spend years, people saying like jettison everybody into the sun and start completely over. Well, you start doing things like that and they start losing. It's kind of like, well, what did you expect? And I'm kind of glad. I'm not glad, but I think it's a good thing in some ways to see Juuse Saros struggle this year, because he's not going to mask the problems that David Poile ignored for so long.
Yep.
Not to say that I hate David Poile, but I mean, like, a lot of what they've been doing this season is either dealing with or getting rid of the albatrosses that Poile put around their necks to start their tenure with the Preds. I mean, it's just the way it's been. And if this was a team, let's say it's the same roster or maybe, whatever, and it's Laviolette or Hines getting the same record, I still would feel more confident in Brunette, even though I might be the only person who didn't think Hines was terrible. Like, it's a different thing because the way they're doing it, the way they're getting guys to the net front movement, the work that they do, the fact that Brunette runs so much of his offense through players who stand behind the goal makes me so happy. They don't, zone entries aren't, we're gonna shoot it as fast as we can around the rim of the wall to make passes. Like, it's great, and the results will come. I would rather this team be what they are right now, doing the things the way they are, than them being a third in the Central team and just getting their asses handed to them in the playoffs. That was Laviolette's thing. He was a regular season coach. It got to the playoffs, the man just refused to adjust. And when you play a 7-game series for 4 rounds, good coaches are going to look at film and adjust what they do to what their opponent does. Laviolette never did that. And I'm sorry, Rangers fans, you can come at me if I'm wrong about this, but you're going to find that out very, very soon. He's a very good regular season coach. Only coach has only lost 3 Stanley Cup finals, which, again, that is an accomplishment. And that's something to be proud of, but he's rigid and that's what's going to happen. Brunette is the opposite. He is a work on the process now. The results will come later, and that's what it is. We're not seeing like Michael McCarron, Yakov Trenin, Cole Smith. These are guys we've all at one point in time said they're in there because they're big. They're in there because they hit. That's it. And that's the only reason. I would say all 3 of those guys have made a case that that's not what they're only about, and have proven to be a little bit more rounded players than what all of us expected. Again, I still think, myself included, that the Preds fan base needs to give a collective apology to guys like Cole Smith. I've got my guys, Jeremy Lazon. I owe the man a big apology. Alex Carrier, I am his biggest cheerleader because I was his biggest hater when he was in the AHL. It's those things. But again, like, considering everything, the people who are like, we need to reconsider the coaches, or we need to do this, we need to find, like, yeah, sell what you can, do what you can, but like, what do you expect? And this is how you start over. It's just, it's the way it goes.
The Band-Aid off.
It's the Band-Aid. It sucks. I will not take that from anybody to say this sucks. I don't want to spend money to watch this team play right now the way they played tonight. But this is what happens. And the good thing about the NHL is there's 82 games. All this gets forgotten when they go on like a 4-game win streak, or Philip Forsberg scores a hat trick, then it's all forgotten. But let's just be honest with ourselves. This is not a great team. It might be a decent team, but it's not a great team. It's kind of bad, and that is okay.
Yep.
There we go.
But
Jeff,
again, we're arguing about Tomasino, so like, I think that things are pretty good.
Yeah.
it's okay.
Even just lineup decisions in general, I feel like we're doing all right.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. It was therapeutic.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. Jeff, what can the good folks check out from you all across the internet this week?
Well, I got Miami hockey is on their bye week, so no the games this weekend, unfortunately. season's wrapping up, which blows. But good news is that Miami baseball starts tomorrow, 4 p.m. Got a preview coming out tomorrow morning on their matchup with South Carolina. And yeah, college baseball itself starts tomorrow too. So you guys in UTK will be in action. Vandy's going to be in action. It'll be fun.
Ball villains are back, baby.
It's gonna be fun. I'm super excited for this season. It's gonna be good.
Got to
now
pay
that I'm
$30 to watch the balls this weekend on Flow Baseball because it's only on Flow Baseball, and you can
Wow.
only get a monthly subscription, and it's $30. There's no trial, so you
I
have to
can
do
watch
a
the
$30
Miami
for-
Redhawks for free on ESPN Plus.
See, that's
Yeah.
what we'll be doing all year long. But for whatever reason, this regional or this tournament against Texas Tech and Baylor, this Big 12 SEC thing, it's on Flow Baseball. $30.
I like Flow what they do, and like for what the kind of sports they carry. I've paid it
Brian,
once because
after
I was.
we get off here, I need you to send over that login code for this.
Oh, I don't have it
weekend.
anymore. I'm not watching ECHL games anymore, so I don't have it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I think it's cool that the fact is that there is a way to watch your teams play, and I'm at the point in my life where I'd rather pay than have to like stream, like pirate something to watch a game. Like if you say that like, hey, here's our app, it's going to cost you $60, $70 a year, but it'll work, by all means, like it's called making the game accessible. Do it more often.
Yeah.
On the Forecheck.com, what's up with you this week, Brian?
I'm going to probably start working on a Sky is Not Falling article.
Okay.
There's that. I've got some things going on. I may have to pop out of hockey coverage for a week or so to take care of a few things out in Bryan land here, but nothing too bad or anything like that. But I'm also been really, really excited. I'm kind of not so secretly planning a little bit of a trip up to Milwaukee. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes, I'm very excited if that works out. Just because it's a whole lot of fun, and I'm glad that, as one Milwaukee fan said, or some person in Milwaukee said, nobody cares about the Admirals except for Preds reporters, and I was like, thank you. I mean, I know he meant that the other way, but I was like, I'll take that. I think that's very untrue. Milwaukee is fantastic. Their fans are fantastic, and they've got traditions. They're an older team than the Preds, and it's awesome. So there's that.
I didn't know that.
They were in the IHL before they were even in the AHL. Like they've been around forever. Yeah. So that sounds cool. But we're heading to that. I think, after this week or so, it's probably gonna be the last slow week until trade deadline season. And I fully get the feeling that some trade is going to come along with some player that nobody thought was going to be moved. While I'm in the middle of doing grocery shopping or something, and I'll be frantically tweeting or writing from my car like I did when Laviolette got fired, like I did when Hines. Like there's like the last 4 breaking news things that happened. I've either been in the middle of shopping or in my car and had to pull over to do it. So here's hoping they wait in time at home at least for whatever they're going to do. But trade deadline season's fun. I'm very excited for it.
There you go. Well, we'll have that coverage on the Forecheck and everywhere else the coming weeks, and also on this podcast. We'll talk about it, and we're just going to go ahead and say guys will be moved for the Preds this deadline, and we'll talk about who those end up being and what the lines look like after that. But that's how we do it here on Preds Power each and every Thursday night. Jeff, Brian, thank you as always, and I'll talk to y'all next week.
See ya.